You had been abused by your dad. You're being abused in this first foster care. They adopt your sister, but then they say they don't want you.
Everybody has something. But guess what? There's somebody that's worse than mine.
The only time that tears came to your eyes so far in this conversation we were having is when you're talking about how you didn't love your husband as much as you wish you had.
I can't control what happened to me as a child, but I absolutely can't now also allow other people to be victimized to my own victimhood. I think that there's a lot of incentive to have a broken system.
You're the president of America and you're like, fix the adoption and foster care system. What would you do?
I don't think that it's about pumping a bunch of money into it.
Is foster care worse than not being born? Today on the Lila Rose Show, I sit down with Amy Main, a mother and advocate and a content creator who shares about going through multiple rounds of foster care as a child, experiencing abandonment, abuse, neglect, and eventually adoption. Amy gets raw and honest about how her early years affect her to this day, including her marriage and her motherhood. But Amy's story is ultimately one of redemption and the power of Jesus Christ to transform lives. I think this topic is so important. And many of you know that I've talked about this topic before because there is a whole advocacy world out there saying that because of horrible situations like abuse and neglect, and because of the struggles of some children in foster care, this is the reason why we need abortion on demand. Amy also beautifully responds to this narrative, and I think you'll find her story and her case deeply compelling. Thank you to everybody who's been subscribing to the show. Did you know that over 70% of people who listen to this show on YouTube are not yet subscribed? You might not even know it yet, but make sure that you hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell so you don't miss future episodes. Also, if you're listening on podcast app right now, thank you. Thank you for helping us rise in the ranks. Make sure you're subscribed over on podcast app and leave us 5 stars and write us a review. I read every one of them. They are so encouraging. I appreciate every single person who takes the time to write those reviews and leave those 5 stars. It helps the show grow. Amy Main, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
So great to meet you finally in person.
I know. Well, we've met like passing, but it's always at like the busiest things. So
get to finally sit down and have a real conversation.
Have an actual conversation where it's not like, hi, bye.
You're awesome. I've watched your stuff now for, I don't know how long it's been, since the beginning, I think, of you being a creator online and telling your story. When I first saw your story, I thought I want her to be the poster child for the pro-life movement because she has been through all of the struggles and you've overcome, and you are a beautiful example of hope. I think to now millions of people that are watching your content. So thank you for making the time to come in. I know it was rough getting in here. So thank you for coming out to California, and I'm very excited for our conversation.
Yeah, definitely worth it. I'm happy to be here.
Where were you born?
I'm from Arkansas originally, and I've moved. That's pretty much like where I grew up and stayed, was in Northwest Arkansas. And
so you have an older sibling.
Well, so I have an older biological sibling, but I'm actually one of 10. 11. So I have one older biological sibling, and then I have 9 adoptive siblings. So yeah, all age range from my sister's 32, but then my youngest sibling is 7. So it's like a pretty big age gap. Yeah.
Are they all adopted?
Yeah. My youngest, we're all adopted, and my sister and I and my brother are not related to each other. But then my other young 7 siblings are all related to each other, but they're not related to us.
With the same mom and dad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this is the second family that adopted you that you have stayed with.
Yeah. So if I say like in this, my family, it's, I'm going to be referring to my parents that adopted me as a teenager and everybody with that. Because I'm not actually in contact with anybody else from my life. I wouldn't consider them like my family. So I would probably distinguish like my biological family, or I'll say my old adopted family, which is hard. People are always like, that's really a strange thing to say. But so my family, my parents, and they adopted us when they were like really young too. We lived in Washington for a while, and we went to Idaho, and my dad always made sure that I walked on like the complete opposite side of my mom because everybody thought we were Mormon, like polygamist.
And like, this is my daughter, not my wife.
He would be like, that's my daughter. And I would have to say dad super loud, but yeah.
How old were they when they adopted you?
My dad was, my dad's 9 years older than me. So he would have been like 25. And then my mom, I think, was 29.
And you were adopted at what age? This was your second adoption?
I had just turned 15.
What inspired a 25-year-old and a 29-year-old couple to adopt a 15-year-old girl from foster care?
And they've always been kind of unconventional. Well, and they were told. So my sister, who I was telling you about, I couldn't get the age right. She's a little bit older than me.
Your biological sister?
No, I have two technically. This is so confusing. So I have an older adopted sister too, and she was adopted by my parents, and she was
from foster care as well.
Yes, from foster care as well, and as a teenager as well. And so I think the reason that I went to go live with them, I was only supposed to be with them for a little bit after I had come back into foster care. I was going on a respite. So it was you're going to stay there for a weekend. And if anybody's does foster care, they're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. It's like a respite usually just stays because it's they don't have a home to go to. So I was only supposed to stay for the weekend.
A temporary thing with this family.
Yeah. And I just ended up staying for longer than that. It was the summertime. And so they were like, well, we're not moving to Washington for a little while, so she can stay with us for a little while. Our license is still open. And my younger siblings, they knew that their biological mom was pregnant and she struggled with addiction and stuff like that. And so they knew that the likelihood that the baby was going to come back into care was high. And so they wanted to keep the kids together. They didn't want them to have to be broken up. And so they kept their home open for that. And so because they kept their home open for my younger brother, who was in utero at the time, I was able to come and live with them. And through just we went to a wedding. I'd never been to a wedding before. It was a giant Catholic wedding too. So it was there was a wedding. And it was but seeing that, and then seeing just how the family kind of operated. We went across the country. It was actually in San Diego where this wedding was at. And then we went back. I was already planning to age out at this point because when you're a kid in foster care and you come in with all of these issues, it's if you're a teenager, one of the best things that the state can do for you, at least it seems in the conventional way, is to help you prepare to not get adopted, essentially, because the likelihood for you to get adopted is so low. And so whenever I came back into care, they were already at 15 preparing me for independent living classes, go learn how to run your own household successfully and get a job and get all of these things. And so I was just pretty much told from the get-go, you're not going to get adopted. So you need to kind of prepare. Yeah. And I would tell anybody and everybody that was in charge of helping me with my care that that's what I wanted. Oh, I don't need a family. I don't want a family. I'm going to be an independent thing. I kind of made this thing kind of my identity. And when I went across the cross country trip and I came back, I was I don't know if I actually do want to, I kind of want a family. Deep down, I wanted a family, but my parents they pulled me aside and they were like, do you want to be adopted? Because of course I was already saying I'm going to do independent living and I don't need anybody. And then I just was yes, I do want to be adopted. And so I got adopted and they made actually an exemption because I hadn't been with my parents for 6 months yet. They made an exception for me to get adopted early in the state. And actually this judge had been my judge for my entire from the time I first went into foster care at 3 all the way to getting adopted for the last time. He had been the same judge that whole time. And so he knew my story and my history and everything. And so he allowed me to be adopted and move to Washington with my family. But they were always doing the thing if their home was open, they allowed kids to come. So many kids came through their home and they took on teenagers, and teenagers, I knew so many amazing teenagers, they were good kids.
Foster care.
Yeah.
Teenagers.
And foster care who went to group homes for behavioral health just simply because they didn't have a bed to put them in. And so it's they kept their home open for that. And kids could go and they were young and people were you're crazy. You're they're going to, they were some of the best temperament for that too, because my mom, she just is a straight shooter. She's not, you don't play her, like you can't manipulate her or anything like that. And so it actually worked out pretty well because kids are in survival mode when they come in. And so she was able it was actually a good fit, even though she was young, even though people were like,
she was tough.
Yeah. Yeah.
In a good way. So wait, how many, so you've got this 25-year-old and 29-year-old mom and dad, you're just living with them temporarily. You start to bond.
Mm-hmm.
And then they say, do you want us to adopt you? And you're like, actually, yeah.
Yeah.
How did that feel when they said, we want to adopt you? What was your heart and mind like? And I know we got to go back to the beginning with your story, but we're starting here.
Mm-hmm. I think I was glad to not have to just kind of lie about what I wanted anymore. I was like, oh, I don't have to do that. Like there is actually other options, and I'm not like going to get, I'm not going to have myself let down or anything like that. Like this is really going to happen. But also there was some, like, is it really going to happen? Because I'd been through failed adoption and there's like a sense of like vulnerability. But after I did get adopted, there was so much that happened that it was almost like I didn't really sit in that thought process for a long time. I didn't really doubt, like, are my parents going to give me up or anything? It just was like, this is what we're doing now. Like, that's the direction we're going. There was not really like this big epiphany or anything, or like this big sigh of relief. It was just like, I don't have to prepare to be familyless now.
Mm. And then when you were adopted, you said they were taking in other kids. So how many kids? So by the time you were adopted at maybe 16, was it?
Yeah.
How many biological kids did they have, if any?
They didn't have any.
Did they ever have biological kids?
No, they never had biological kids.
And they ended up adopting 9 total.
They adopted 9 children total together. Yeah.
And of those 9, they were included babies. So they were raising babies, they were raising teens, it's really incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a wild, we did foster care. My husband and I did foster care for a little while. And we ended up having to close our home. But when we took in foster kids, we took in several teenagers. And I'm like, my parents did, it's hard. It's hard. And I don't ever want to sugarcoat it with people to say like that foster care and the children that are coming into foster care, like they come with baggage. Kids, toddlers, teenagers, all difficult with stable homes. They come with their own challenges. Even if they were born to you and you raise them ground up, they can come with their own challenges. And when you have teenagers that come in who have abuse or instability, or they never had a dad in the home, a lot of fatherlessness in the foster care system. Parents didn't actually ever want to raise them. They never felt important. Like all of that baggage that's coming is like an extra level. So it's like not just young people raising teenagers. It's like young people raising teenagers and kids while also handling biological family thrown in the mix. It's like, it can be a very challenging thing. I think that even I didn't understand at a level until I did it, that as a foster child, I knew what it was like to be a foster child, but I never knew what it was like to be a foster parent. So the level of commitment that they showed and just willingness it's pretty astounding.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I want to get back to them and also your experience fostering, and then obviously you're meeting your husband, having your own kids, but I want to go back to the beginning. Mm-hmm. Little Amy growing up with her, I think it was a single dad, but what were the circumstances of your early years?
Yeah.
And then how did you end up in foster care the first time?
Yeah. I grew up with a single dad because my mom left for a pack of cigarettes whenever I was 2 months old and just like never came home. And this was like her MO though. I actually have a lot of, I don't know how many biological siblings I have. I just know there's a lot out there because this is kind of like what she would do. And I have an older biological sister and she's a year older than me. And my dad was just like one day out of the blue, he's married to his wife who just like never came home and then just was like, you're on your own.
Did he try to find her?
I actually don't know. I know that they knew, like my biological family had been in touch. I found that out as a teenager. So I'm guessing there was some level of like communication of some sort. Like they knew that she left willingly. It wasn't like a missing persons thing.
But she just relinquished care, and you're 2 months old at this point.
Yeah. She had drug issues. I don't think that she did while like pregnant with me or my sister or even in a relationship with my dad. But whenever I got married, she had actually died of a drug overdose like a couple weeks before my wedding. So I think she had just struggled for years with that. And she left at 2 months old, and I left my dad as a single dad. And
with a 2-month-old and a 1-year-old.
A 2-month-old and a 1-year-old. And he had an alcohol addiction problem. And he was a very angry person. And which under the stress of like the best circumstances, that would be very stressful to be a single parent. But we lived with him until I was 5, or no, whenever I was 3, we went into the foster care system for the first time. And it's really foggy. Like I can't really remember a lot of it, but we went into the foster care system because my sister had an injury, and then they found out that there was some instability. So we go into the foster care system, but we ended up going back to him, and we lived with him until just after 9/11 happened, and we were homeless. We lived in the back of our car, and we went from like...
How old were you at this point?
I would have been 5 or 6. And I went to the counselor's office frequently because they could just tell, I think, that something was up. And I told them, like, I had no idea. I thought it was like a cool thing that I lived in a car. And then I remember I was like sitting in the office one day. I knew it was supposed to be parent-teacher conference. My dad was supposed to come pick me up. And there was this lady that was like riding out to check out a child. And I remember like looking at her, she had brown hair like me, and she was really pretty. And I just always had this thing whenever I was a kid that I would just imagine any pretty woman that looked like me. Like I wish she was like my mom. And I was thinking about that with this lady. And then 2 police officers walked in, and I was like, that's kind of weird. And I was kind of scared of police just because they just were never around. Like it was just not good when they were around. Usually it was because somebody was doing something wrong. But she came up to me, and she actually was the lady from the state who was taking me into foster care. And I was like, I almost like felt betrayed by her, because I was like, oh my gosh, I was just like wishing that you were my mom. And I thought I was going into foster care because my dad was late to pick me up from parent-teacher conferences. But when I went with them, they actually let me say goodbye to my dad. And my dad said, like whispered in my ear in front of them too. It's like so dumb. But he said, like, don't tell them anything. And we were physically abused a lot by my dad. He was very violent, and he already had anger issues. And so it was just like that was already apparent. And I don't remember telling the counselor about that or the physical abuse, but we didn't go to family. We ended up being placed in the foster care, like into the cycle of foster care. And we went to homes. And at that time, like we got to stay together. Me and my sister got to stay together. And the state is usually pretty good about trying to keep siblings together or trying to place them with family. But we went and ended up at a house that there was lots of kids, and the foster dad was actually like an angry alcoholic. And it was just like one place that was just like copy and paste into another place. But there was a foster mom there. She was like really timid, and I'm pretty sure there was like abuse happening there. But a really not great home. I call it like the house of horrors, because I experienced a lot of abuse and sexual abuse in that home by other foster children. And after that, my sister and I got split up because the state realized like something was going on. And so my sister and I got split up, and over several years, from probably about 4 years after that, my dad's rights were terminated and we got adopted. But when we moved in with they usually will like try you out with an adoptive family, because some people just go in, they don't go in to be foster parents, they just go in to adopt children. And so they'll place a child that's ready to be adopted into the home to see how it goes. And I had a lot of behavior issues because I didn't have any stability. I saw like rage. And so that was just like, I'm not going to say it was like a learned habit, but it was never something that I had to unlearn, because it was just something that was normal in my environment. And I was a really hard child. My sister had a different survival instinct, I would say. She was just more timid, a lot more even tempered. And so they said they want to adopt my sister, but they don't want to adopt me. And so the state allowed us to be separated. And I got placed with another family, but it was actually in the same city. So I still got to see my sister at school and stuff. And I got adopted by my other family at 9. And I lived with them from 9 to 13.
7 Weeks Coffee is America's pro-life coffee company on a mission to fund the pro-life movement and help moms and babies in need. What I love about this coffee is it is from the top 1 or 2% of beans in the world, and it's also mold-free, pesticide-free, ultra-low acid, and organically farmed. And this is where you and I come in. Not only can we subscribe to 7 Weeks Coffee and get the most delicious coffee delivered right to our door, we know that with every single purchase we make at 7 Weeks Coffee, they are donating a full 10% to pregnancy resource centers in need. And a huge congratulations to 7 Weeks Coffee for hitting over $1 million donated to pregnancy resource centers and moms and babies in need. Go to 7weekscoffee.com today. Subscribe and save a full 15% off your order. And when you use the code Lila, you get an additional 10% off your first order. That's a full 25% off your first order at 7weekscoffee.com. And you'll also get a free gift. Order today and help fuel the pro-life movement. A huge thank you to our sponsor, We Heart Nutrition. We Heart Nutrition is America's premier pro-life, family-owned supplement company. These supplements are made in their most bioavailable form for your body for easy absorption and digestion. When I remember to take my vitamins, I feel it. I feel less brain fog, especially when I take the magnesium supplement. And when I forget to take my vitamins, I feel it. And they have a new product over at We Heart Nutrition that I'm excited about. If you know somebody who is concerned about their bone density or their bone health, there's a specific product for your bone health. It's for men and women ages 40 and older. Go to weheartnutrition.com right now and take their 20-second survey to find out the best supplement package for you that is specialized for wherever you are in your life, wherever you are with your health. That's weheartnutrition.com. Use the code Lila at checkout for a full 20% off your order.
As you may know, porn addiction is on the rise for both women and men today. The porn industry is a billion-dollar industry preying off of vulnerable men and women. The good news is that there is a solution, and our show is proud to partner with CovenantEyes.com. CovenantEyes.com is not only something to block explicit material on your phone, your tablet, or your laptop, but CovenantEyes.com is also a community to give you strength to choose good things instead of to choose the destruction of porn. Whether you're a parent protecting your kids, a husband searching for accountability, or a wife searching for accountability, or somebody who just wants to make sure that porn doesn't make it onto your screen, CovenantEyes.com has got you covered. So you can go to CovenantEyes.com and get a free 30-day trial using the code Lila. That's CovenantEyes.com. Use the code Lila for a free 30-day trial. Start your journey to freedom today.
You had been abused by your dad. You're in this adoptive family situation. They adopt your sister, but then they say they don't want you.
Yeah, I was 9. So I think that there was only so much. There's no trying to understand the situation when you're 9 years old. It was just, I'd already been moved from home to home. They had split my sister up, put us back together. And over 4 years, for me, that's half my life at that point. And so that was all I really knew and understood. And so it was just another thing of being rejected. And I would say it probably did come out in more of my behavior and just my reaction to it. Definitely played a part, maybe not in that moment, but definitely years down the line in a lot of decisions that I made that actually caused me to go back into the foster care system. Was just a lot of people pleasing, a lot of trying to be valued to other people, and a lot of acting certain ways because I was trying to get the reaction from other people that I was valuable. So maybe in that moment, I think I'd already not lived with my sister for a little bit. So that part wasn't as foreign to me, but they're wanting her. I think the only thing that caused me from not just feeling totally lost cause is that I almost immediately went and was placed with another family that wanted to adopt me. So I would say it affected me later, but in that moment, I think that God allowed me to kind of be shielded from it.
And the second family that adopted you, this was the one that you were with from 9 to 14.
Yeah, 9 to 13.
9 to 13.
Yeah, I lived with them, and they were more of like more passive. Like they were Christians, but it's hard to explain like the type of Christianity that we were around. It's I'm from the Bible Belt, so maybe people who live in the Bible Belt would understand that. It was more of like, it's like a thing you do. It's not really, it wasn't a part of like my life. It was not like an instruction and teaching. The Christian walk was much like, this is just kind of how you act as a Christian. It wasn't really like, this is a deep relationship with the Lord. I'm not saying that they didn't know the Lord or that didn't.
It wasn't as real in your daily life. You didn't feel, it wasn't something that you really identified in your daily life. It was more like, we're Christians, we go to church. But this idea of like, Jesus is with you, like the Holy Spirit, like, God has a plan. Like that was not as
that wasn't. No, it wasn't. And so I really just focused a lot on like the actions that I was doing, of like getting a certain outcome from how I was acting. And I struggled for years of just like anger issues. And it came out in my relationships at school. It was always pretty good with like school work itself. But the relationships really from early on, I was not good at choosing friends. And I was really good at hiding the type of friends that I had from my parents, even from a young age. And so I ended up moving schools whenever I was in the 8th grade. And because I had told my parents, like, I'm in with the wrong crowd. And I was always like in ISS getting suspended and stuff. And so they're like, okay, well, we're going to move you schools and that's fine. So they drove me to another school, just like a town away. And I got an exemption. I got to switch schools. And I ended up in an even worse crowd. Only in this town, now I was exposed not just to like bad behavior or speaking out in class or, getting in trouble at school, but I was exposed to drugs and alcohol. And so I kind of started down that path. And it was for a very short period of time. Now looking back, it felt like a really long time that I was doing this, but it was for about 6 months. And I got picked up for shoplifting. My parents came and got me. And I got into a really big argument with my parents. And
Did they have other kids at this point?
No, he had a son, but his son was like 15 years older than me. He was already in his 20s. So I was just like their only child. When I lived with them, I was an only child essentially. But whenever I got picked up for shoplifting and I got into a fight with my parents, they were going to put me in like a behavior group home. But they were actually closed. It was like after 5. So they couldn't do that, which is kind of ironic. But I ended up going and living with my friend that I got caught shoplifting with and who I was in with like the drugs and the alcohol. And they saw a big major behavioral change in me in those 6 months that I had shifted schools. But I don't think they understood. I was really good at, like I said, like hiding the type of friends that I was around. And I ended up going and living with that friend. And then several months in, I say that this is God because I'm getting to do pretty much whatever I want. I'm getting to party. I have a boyfriend. I have all this stuff that is like, I have all of my freedom, but something in me was like, I don't want to live like this. Like it had to have been God before I knew him. Because I called my parents from school and I was like, I don't want to live like this. Like I need help. And I'm in the 8th grade. So I know 8th graders now. And I know some that have really struggled with certain things. And I'm like, I could just never imagine you doing that. So I know that it couldn't have been me. And they came and I ended up getting into a rehabilitation center for youth. And I got into more trouble at this rehabilitation center. And I was actually being bullied at this place, but my retaliation was to like physically like get back in their face and yelling and everything. And this is a place where you would go because the court made you go there. So all these kids that are there, they've been in the system, like not the foster care system, but like the police system, the judiciary system.
It's not juvenile hall, but
Yeah,
it's like a step towards it almost.
Yeah. And if you got kicked out, you're going to juvenile hall. And so I was in there on a FINS case. So because it was really expensive to send your kid to rehab, the state helped send me. And so when they have like a zero tolerance for fighting. So if you get kicked out, you have to go because you're in there on a court order and you have to go to essentially you get arrested and then you get sent to juvenile hall. And so these girls go to juvenile hall. Well, I got pulled into the office and they said I wasn't under arrest, but they had two transport from DHS were going to be there to get me soon. And I was like, why is DHS coming? Like, I've been in the Department of Human Services.
Okay.
I think it's called DCFS now. I don't know if that was like an old school term, but I knew it meant foster care. And so I was like, that's really weird that they're coming to get me because I don't have to go to jail, but why do I have to go there? Is it because I don't have to go to jail that I have to go there? I don't know.
You had adoptive parents at this point.
Yeah, I'd been adopted for 5 years.
Were you thinking, where are my adoptive parents?
Yeah. And I asked them, I was like, well, I have parents. Like, I'm not in foster care. Why aren't my parents just coming to get me? And I was really far away from my parents. It was like 5 hours away. And so I thought maybe it's just like they're taking me back. And they said, well, your parents requested that you go back with the state. And I was like, yeah, like give a kid. Yeah, like my brain just couldn't process it.
How old were you at this point?
I was 14, almost 15. And I was like, okay.
And you'd been with them since you were 9?
Since I was 9, yeah.
And they didn't tell you?
No, they didn't.
They just dropped you back off?
No. Yeah.
They didn't even drop you back off?
No, I had been in rehab. And I'd seen them the weekend before.
And they didn't say anything?
No, it's kind of out of nowhere. I don't know. I don't want to say it and be mean. I think it was cowardice. I think that went back into the foster care system and I ended up going and I had to go to court because you're like in court all the time whenever you're in foster care. And the judge, who is the same judge that had been with me like my whole life, made them tell me. And like, she didn't look at me and tell me. So it was awful. It was not, I mean, when you have a child that you adopt, because people are always astonished. They're like, can you give an adopted child back? It's actually child abandonment. They don't say like you had a child and you adopted them. Like they coined the phrase you had a failed adoption, but you had a failed adoption post-adoption. You gave up your biological child in the eyes of the law. Like there's no differentiation for like the legal relinquishing of your right as a parent. So I essentially was like abandoned legally. And I went back into the foster care system and I was just like wrecked after that. I had called them actually whenever I first went back in and I was like, let me talk to my parents because once I finally got to the DHS office, like I realized, oh, like this is not just, I think in my mind, I thought I'm going to get back and then I'm going to convince my parents to come pick me up because what the heck am I going? Like, is this just like a stint in foster care because they're like mad at me or something? But I walked in and like I looked across all the cubicles and I saw like this area that had like this big empty office and I saw all of my possessions were in there. Like they had already packed up all my stuff and like given it back to me. And it was at that point I was like, let me call my parents. And they were like, you're going to go with the state and this is what it is. And it was kind of like this scripted thing that they were giving me over and over. And I actually had a place to go. Like I was telling you earlier, it's really hard to find a place for a teenager to go. I had like a regular home to go to, a regular foster home to go to. It was a couple who like they took in a lot of teenagers and stuff. And so I kind of bit the hand that fed me because I took that for granted and I was not very nice to them. But
did you ask to call them and say,
yeah,
like, because were you thinking this must be a mistake?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think once I saw all my stuff, I was like, you're going to let me call my parent. Like I was starting to spiral and freak out on this person. And he was like, okay, we'll let you talk to them. Cause it's like after hours, there's like nobody there except for me, the transport ladies, and this one caseworker and this big thing.
And your belongings.
And all my stuff. Yeah. And yeah, like I was saying, it's just kind of like a scripted thing that they gave me of like, you're going to go and you're going to live with, like, you're going to be in foster care and this is what's best for you. Like they were
your
like,
parents told you that.
Yeah. They were just like, this is what's going to be best for you. I was like, this is not like, I don't know if you've never been in foster care, but this is not what's best for me. Like, I don't want to be here. And, but I did, I had like a home to go to by the grace of God. Like I didn't have to go and be at like a intervention place or anything.
Did you have the words to even say like, please don't do this to, like, was that part of the
I begged to come home. I was like, I know I screwed up like over the last 6 months, but like I will do whatever you want. Like, please don't make me go into care. But I don't know how long they had decided.
What I mean,
I don't know.
I don't mean to harp on it, but you said they were Christians, or you said that they
profess to be Christians.
I mean, it's a big deal to abandon a child.
Yeah. I talked to them years later about it because I tried, I had kids and I tried to go and talk to them again. And it was very much like a taboo thing. Like, don't talk about what happened, and just kind of like, it was a weird
like
relationship.
They weren't willing to even confront what they had done. And
not really.
it.
I had asked them and they kind of just said that like, it's what the state told them to do. But I just I don't believe that.
And when you were begging not to go back into foster care, you'd been abused in foster care. You had experienced all of these things. And we're going to get to the narrative that is used to justify abortion, that foster care is so rotten, it's better for the child to die, which I know has been used on you. Like, your life's of suffering would be better off not having happened. That's why abortion is so necessary. So we're going to get into all of that, and a lot of your content's about that. But I do think it's really important to get real about what you experienced, what you endured. Mm-hmm. And I do want to hear your take on how we can improve it, because I know you have thoughts on that too. But when you're in this position where you're discovering that this family that had adopted you, chosen you, adopted you, loved you for 4 years without even telling you why or how, you're out.
Yeah.
Was that the most hurtful thing in your life up until that point, if you can answer that, out of all the hurt you had experienced? Or how did that hit compared to everything else you had experienced?
Yeah, I would say probably because children are very resilient to what they, like, you can just totally kind of shift things. But once you hit, like, there's a certain unawareness that a child has when they hit a certain age, like 9, 12, like they understand what's going on. So while my life before may have seemed like even more traumatic than that moment, that was probably the most traumatic because I had an understanding about what was going on. And also at the same time, I 100% believe that God used it being my normal to protect me in that moment. Because when I tell people like my story, they're like, how are you a functioning adult? And it's truly, first of all, that was like my normal. I didn't know stability. So if you know stability and then you don't know stability, like, and then stability is taken from you, that's one thing. But when you don't know stability at all, then it's not really like, it's like old hat. So, but because I did understand that I was going back into the foster care system, I think it was like the most like flip things on your head type of a thing, and kind of earth shattering news. And it was very much like out of my control. And I knew what was happening, but I didn't know what was coming. And so it was I've always kind of had a weird understanding of what it's like to be a parent or have parents. And I really have only understood that after becoming a parent. It didn't actually happen for me when I got adopted the second time.
Were you scared?
I think I was just like ticked off. I don't know if I was scared. I think I was very resilient, and it was just the next thing that was going to happen. But I was angry, and I was desperate to have a sense of control. And so at least if things were like going to get screwed up, it was going to like be me to choose to screw them up type of a thing. But it was kind of like the normal flow of things. So whenever I went to this foster family that I first went into placement with, this is not my adoptive family now, but it was just like, I just kind of came to terms with it and just settled into like the new normal.
How many families did you have during your, I mean, I guess it would have been 15 years. No, it would have been, 10 years.
12, yeah, something like that.
10 to 12 years in and out of foster care.
The first time I went in, I can't tell you, I moved a lot.
Because you were so little at that point, right? Just 3 years old.
Yeah. And there's no telling how many families I stayed with only for like a short period of time. Like even now as an adult, sometimes I'll think and I'm like, oh, that was a foster family. And I just like only like remember a tiny little thing that will jog my memory. But well over 10, I would say for sure. But it could be like exponentially more than that. I don't know.
They don't like give you a list?
No.
Or can you request a list now that you're an adult? Be like, I'd like to know who I stayed with.
Yeah. No, I don't think so. And all that stuff is like sealed and stuff now too, because once you become adopted, like I was saying, you like, they seal it and that's like a completely different person. So I've technically been like 3 different people.
What does that mean?
Like your social security number changes, your entire identity changes, your name changes. Some people choose not to change their children's names.
Have you always been Amy?
No. Mm-mm. But I don't want to say what her name was. Yeah. Actually, you chose my name, Amy.
You became Amy with the last adoptive family.
I became Amy whenever I was adopted the first time. So I kept that name. And then my middle name changed when I was adopted with my now family. Yeah.
When you look back at all those years, you've used the word instability a few times. Mm-hmm. How do you think, like from your own lived experience, which I think there's nothing better to understand than like someone who can say, this is what it was like.
Right.
How do you think that affects a soul? You know, a kid in foster care who's going in and out, especially at a young age. We'll talk, you were talking about older just a moment ago, but for that younger age, I know you don't remember everything, but
right.
You have kids of your own now. You're in a stable, loving Christian marriage now.
Right.
We're going to get into that more too. But from the perspective you have now, knowing what health is like,
yeah,
how does it affect a child to be in and out of families like that?
The foundation of having parents that, well, first of all, that are just like married and together, even if they're not happy, provides even so much more stability for a child. It gives them a safety because they can anticipate what's coming. When you cannot anticipate what's coming, you're constantly going to be in like a fight or flight mode. And I would say, it completely shifts the foundation of a child's, like the way that they learn, the way that they have relationships, the way that they bond to their parents, the way that they view themselves. That stability is so vital to provide, like lifetime wise, providing like a good foundation to build on. It's the family unit and stability, even if it's not like the perfect one, which there are literally no perfect ones. So if anybody's like, I can't provide that for my child, so it's just best if they're not, I don't want to put my child through that. No, nobody's perfect, but having that stability, not having that stability and removing that stability from a child is going to throw them into an inability to process like the world around them. It's going to affect every aspect of their life, how they view things, because it's like putting on a different pair of glasses. It's not, everything might still operate the same, but the way that they see it is so different because that foundation is off. And so the instability, like for example, one of the ways that it would manifest as an adult is I would create chaos around me. It's specifically like with I almost can't talk about this. In my marriage, I would do that in my marriage. I just love him so much, so I hate thinking about it. But I would start fights with my husband, and as I grew as a Christian and like found a stability and a safety with my husband, it made me realize like, that's where it's coming from, is because I would constantly stir up the norm that I had. And so because I never knew like the steadiness of things, I would constantly try to recreate my normal, which wasn't healthy. And so it's like you're going to cause your child to have to break a pattern maybe like 50 years in the future. They may not realize it for a really long time. So I would say having that is one of the most important, any semblance of stability and provides safety for your child.
And so not having it, thank you for sharing that. So not having it, it's like, I mean, I've heard that too in like psychological literature and even in like my own therapy I've had. And I, again, like, you are so strong. It's like, it's mind blowing to me how strong you are. And I know you credit the grace of God, of course, but
right.
The grace of Jesus Christ. But yeah, I've heard in, therapy and things like that, like you recreate your childhood patterns to what feels normal to you,
right.
Even if it's super dysfunctional, super unhealthy.
Yeah.
That's what you will do in adulthood. Like just because you've wired yourself behaviorally that way.
Right.
And so you have to redirect yourself intentionally to kind of retrain your emotions and your thought patterns and your behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, from your viewpoint, it's been your experience. Is that an experience you think a lot of other kids may have coming from instability, where they create, and you get into the kind of generational chaos, like, divorces that kind of seem to pass on generation to generation, right. And chaos that passes on because they haven't learned to get out of that pattern.
Mm-hmm. It's like the generational curse, which are very real. But yeah, I would say that you're going to see that is going to be something that a child, like when they respond to it, I would say that they're going, that is something that's not just down to like foster children. You're going to see that in like if a dad leaves or you see a divorce or something like that creates a crack. And I'm not saying that there's never a valid reason, like if you're being abused or whatever by your spouse, like you can't be like, well, I have to stick it out because I can't create instability for my child. Like it's not the sword to live and die on. Or anything,
abuse is instability right there.
Yeah, it already has happened. Yeah. But I don't remember exactly what your question was.
No, I'm just commenting on the reality of patterns and their impact throughout generations, like you were saying, but then the power of breaking the pattern intentionally, which it sounds like you're working on or you've done, which is incredible.
And it's never
and you're willing to share, which I so appreciate because it's so powerful.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people see it and then they'll say say that for some reason, like you and your spouse, like you can't stay together and you don't want to create that instability, but it's with the grace and the power of God, there's never like a thing that's like, sorry, there's no overcoming that thing. Mm-hmm. Everybody has something. And if you don't think you have something, like you need to talk to somebody because there's something. Everybody, I went through a thing recently with some women in my church. And it was just talking about like, you don't think that you do certain things. Like I had a good childhood. It was a stable childhood growing up, and like it wasn't the normal. And it's like, but you do certain things and you have certain habits that you're trying to break that that don't honor the Lord. Like that comes from somewhere. It's almost always traced back to childhood. Like if you look at the rates of like homosexuality, it being traced back to childhood sex abuse, the rates are astounding. And that's just the people being honest with you. The amount of shame that you carry because you're a child and you're groomed to think almost always whenever you're abused as a child, they convince you that you're a participant instead of a victim because they're grooming you.
For sexual abuse, yeah.
Yes, exactly. And so there's a certain amount of shame of it being something you participated in. So when you look at the stats of people that are being honest, it's almost always going to be way lower because especially for men, they're not going to be honest about certain things because they're carrying shame. And it's really hard to be honest with other people about shame that you carry. So you look at those things that deeply affect who you are as an adult, like tracing back with the homosexuality and the sexual abuse that comes forward, like you just see women a lot of times whenever they like the transgenders because they don't feel right in their body because somebody used their body in a way that was not intended by God and they didn't have a right to use their body for it. And so they want to get out of their body. Those feelings that they're experiencing are very real, that they come from this foundation of childhood.
Have you you're out there now, your content's being viewed by millions of people. So you've had tons of people reach out to you as you share your story. You're also involved in church ministry, you've been involved in youth ministry, et cetera. Have you had people open up to you about those things in particular, like sexuality or transgender issues rooted back into childhood?
Well, I actually see not so much adults, but I do see it in boys. I see because I work with middle schoolers and stuff, and I see like a pretty big correlation in how boys are outwardly performing, and it directly ties to an unstable home environment. Almost always divorce or single parent. And
this is in youth ministry?
Yeah, but just even seeing, because we are in more of like an outreach area. It's not like a bunch of
like
kids
lower
that
income.
Yeah, but like just they don't come. Their parents aren't coming to church. They come because they want to come, which is absolutely, these kids are just phenomenal, amazing kids. But something that I'm not the only adult to have recognized this, is that we see that and we see that they're not coming from like this stable home environment. I don't want to share like too much about this, and it's not anything specific to maybe just one person that I know or that would know me, but I just see it as a trend in the community overall of like this huge shift. And I think it's also tied to like the use of social media and the constant comparison. But yeah, I would say like childhood is going to set your course for a lot of things, a lot of worldview, a lot of the way that you see, not just the way that you see yourself, but just the way that you see pretty much everything.
What about the impact of abuse? Because there's like neglect and instability, which you talked a little bit about already, but abuse is its own category.
Right. And
then there's physical abuse and then sexual abuse, and they both have their own impacts. And so from your vantage point now, how do you see those things impacting, you? And then would you say sort of patterns that you think they impact adults? And then connected to that, what does healing look like? And that's a big question, but
yeah. For me specifically, experiencing those things, I think it took a lot of like recognizing, first of all, the things that are happening to you when you're a child, as much as you want to say like, I could have done this or I could have done that, it's pretty much almost always outside of your control. It really is up to the parent to make sure that the environment their child is growing up in is something that the parent is controlling. And I know a lot of people are like, you need to let your child make these decisions and be their own person. And while I understand that and like I appreciate that, it is a parent's job to make sure that their child is safe, to make sure, that their child is growing up in an environment that is going to shape their worldview in a healthy way. But as the abuse from my childhood carried on, it has been since being married and having the stability of my marriage and the length of my marriage allowed me to have to, look in retrospect and heal from those things. And healing from those things, like if you have a child and they've experienced instability and like maybe they're not out of childhood yet, or maybe they're an adult or whatever, all of it comes from like acknowledging it and being honest about it and not downplaying it too, of like, well, everybody goes through hard things. It's like you have to acknowledge it and then to take the power from the enemy and put it in the hands of the Lord, because it's the potter and he can make anything new. Not just he can improve a really bad situation and he can like he completely regenerates you. That's why when I explain to people, it's not just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and learn and grow. Yes, you need to take accountability and responsibility for your choices moving forward, because it can be really easy to slip into like this victim mentality. I could have ridden the coattails of my own victimhood from childhood and been a victim for the rest of my life. Or I can say, I can't control what happened to me as a child, but I absolutely can't now also allow that to create other people to be victimized to my own victimhood, like my husband, who had no idea why I was fighting with him out of nowhere and causing stress and chaos in my marriage. That was my thing that I needed to go and take responsibility for. And so it's really, really hard to balance where you don't want to act like it's not a big deal. You just need to get over it. That's not what I'm saying. But there is a certain level of like pride that you have to let go of when it comes to that. Because while trauma is like deeply impactful and it is a horrible thing, there is a certain amount of pride that's associated with like trying to control how you respond to it. And so I've seen a lot of people, and I say this because I was this person. It was like, I had a bad thing happen to me. And so now I can make these choices and it's fine because I get a pass because the bad thing happened to me. And other people should feel bad for me because like they should have more leniency for me because they feel bad for me. And trauma does not justify you making bad choices. It doesn't absolve you from the consequences of your further choices because you had a hard upbringing. Like everybody has something. That might sound a little harsh, but everybody has something. And some people's worse than others. But guess what? There's somebody that's worse than mine. And I can either be a victim for the rest of my life and I can allow that to impact my marriage and the way that I raise my children and make my children cater to my issues that I had as a child because I left them unchecked. I can pass it on, or I can release it to the Lord and allow it to be healed. Because if I keep holding on to it, then God's not going to pry it from my hands. That's not how it works. So you have to allow him to do the work in you. And if anybody thinks like, I'm just going to do it by myself, I'm not the type of person that's like, it only works for me because I'm a Christian and that's the religion that I accept. Like a true healing really only works with the Lord because he is the only source of true regeneration as a person. And so the healing has to come from acknowledging it. Today. Yeah, it is. It's a God issue.
People don't have the ultimate healer. Mm-hmm. Sorry to interrupt because you were on the roll.
No, it's true.
But
it's true. And people try to find the healing in like self-help books. They try to find the healing in going to therapy. They try to find the healing in like the universe, in yoga, and trying to connect with their own thing, trying to be their own truth, trying to be their own source of happiness. And it's not there. It's just not there. And I know people are like, I love to try to convince people of the truth. And I'm not just saying like, I'm trying to convince you of the way I think. I truly believe this is the truth. I don't like to go and try to convince people from a worldly secular standpoint because the worldly secular standpoint isn't actually correct. It's a half truth. And if it's not tied back to where the source of truth is, and we try to create truth outside of God, you've sold someone a half lie. And that's a whole lie. So this whole like, well, we try to convince people, like when it comes to even just talking to people about the pro-life movement, I don't start with kind of the end. I start with the beginning. No, that person has dignity because they're made in the image of God. Like I'm trying to convince this person not just of the truth of that person's dignity, but I'm trying to convince them of the ultimate truth, which is Christ. Because this is a symptom of a generation that's turned its back on God. The symptom of abortion and the rampant fatherlessness in homes and, just sexual immorality in our culture and the decay and the depression and the anxiety is a God issue. It's not a human issue. So you're not going to
God issue.
Yeah, exactly.
So for you, Jesus Christ is the answer to everything. Mm-hmm. He is.
Yeah, truly.
There's no like,
yeah,
he is the way, he is the truth. He is the life. So for you though, practically applying that reality, right? Mm-hmm. That's the whole question of the Christian walk and Christian discipleship. And you have been through hell and back. Like your childhood, we didn't even get into all the details. Like you just were like, and then I was abused, and then I was abused for 5 years, and then I was, neglected, abandoned. Like everything. You endured so much. Here you are, and the only time that tears came to your eyes so far in this conversation we were having is when you're talking about how you didn't love your husband as much as you wish you had when you were holding on to wounds that you had or wrestling with these wounds. And that makes me want to cry because it's so beautiful. So I'm going to start crying here.
It's hard for me to talk about him.
You must love him a lot. You love him a lot. So what has it looked like for you on a practical level to be healed of the abuse? We talked a little bit about the instability and the abandonment. You mentioned kind of having to go back and acknowledge it, that it happened.
Right.
What is that? If you're willing to share, like what has that process looked like for you?
Actually acknowledging it and growing from it. Because you can have a tendency as a human being to think that you've dealt with something by just like stuffing it down and then putting it away. And because it doesn't impact you in like a super symptomatic way, you think like that you've healed from it. But just like acknowledging it has come over like the last 2 to 3 years, really since the end of 2023, when I woke up to the chaos and my parents went through a really nasty divorce and my family just like fell apart.
Your final adopted family.
Yeah. I don't talk to my mom, my sibling, like my whole family has descended into chaos. And it has really, I have seen that it has really come from turning not just on the truth of God, but on obeying God. And as much as you can go and say that you believe in God, if you do not live a life that reflects that, you don't truly live in a submission of belief, because Satan believes that God exists. Actually, Satan doesn't have faith. Like he knows, he's seen him. He knows him better than you or I probably
He's more
know
theologically like astute. That's
exactly.
so crazy to think about it, but it's true.
Yeah. He may not have the Holy Spirit. We have that.
He's
and he does
rejected him.
not.
Yeah.
But he knows. And so that is not a saving faith. That
knowing the details of God is not enough. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's simple intellectual acknowledgement is not enough to have a life that gets to have the benefits of the Holy Spirit. First, it's not just about that. If God never gifted us the Holy Spirit, it would still be sufficient. If God never saved us, we would still be getting exactly what we earned. But with the Holy Spirit comes fruit. And if you don't respond to that fruit, you quench the Spirit, you're not going to be able to live a life free in Christ.
Are you talking about the disobedience of your parents divorcing?
I'm not necessarily talking about that, although I really struggle with that. And out of like respect and their privacy, I can't like disclose the why. There was justification for certain things. But I'm talking about that I didn't have a lot of healing because until 2023, I called myself a Christian. I said that I believed in God. I lived in the Bible Belt, but I did not live like a Christian. I didn't love my husband like a Christian. I didn't love my children like a Christian mother. I was not worried for my children's souls. I wasn't worried for my soul. I had a superficial, bloated, squishy understanding of what it meant to know God. And when I realized that I was living a lukewarm faith that was not in obedience to God, when the shift happened, there is a shift. There's absolutely a shift. And if you're a Christian, I would say the one caveat is if you grew up in the church and you just always loved God, because I think about like people like Lisa Childers, who is like, I just grew up and I just knew God and I just love God. Like, I think that those people can exist, right? But if you weren't a Christian, then you're like, I became a Christian and God became a part of my life, but like, you don't look different. You didn't become a Christian. Like, I don't know if I want to judge someone's faith, or salvation.
The fruit, you'll know them by their fruit.
But you will know them by their fruit.
But when you're 18 and you're getting married as Christians, and from what I understand, you decided with your husband, we're not going to have sex before marriage. Like,
we didn't even kiss.
You didn't even kiss.
Yeah.
So you were trying to obey God and follow him. So that's not lukewarm, because lukewarm would have been like, whatever.
But there is I did a lot of things to achieve the appearance
Okay.
of being a Christian.
So it didn't come from a place of
Yeah. I tried to put fruit on my own tree
interesting.
instead of
So it's
allowing
like, I'm
the
going
fruit.
to, Christian is good. I want to be Christian. God is God. So I'm going to do these XYZ Christian things. So there was a lack of this deepest movement of your heart of complete surrender.
Correct. Yeah. And I carried that for so many years. That's why in my marriage, I could still treat my husband in an ungodly manner. And like, I didn't have the deep conviction. I had guilt, but I didn't have Holy Spirit conviction. I feel like there's a difference because you see people that reject God, but they still have guilt. But that's because God's law is written on our heart, right? So you're going to have a flash of being able to discern it and know it, that you did something, but the mark of a Christian is your response to that. And so I was not living in a response that was of obedience. I was living in a response of like, I'm just going to try to fix the symptoms. And whenever God was like, you're on the road to hell if you do not wake up, like your faith is, you can say that I'm real, but it's not, you're not living. It's not just, I think it's the word pistevo when it talks about if you confess and believe that Jesus Christ is Lord, then you will be saved. The believe there is not intellectual. It is a word. It
surrender.
means, to relinquish
Just
and to live in
give
submission.
him everything.
Yeah. And you're not doing it your way. You're going to live. And that's not works. That's not works like I'm trying to earn my salvation. It's you have salvation. So that's going to come.
What was it though? You said around 2023 that, well, your family descended into chaos, as you said. Your parents divorced. This is this beautiful family with these 10 adopted kids, and now it's all shattered. I mean, that sounds devastating. Totally devastating.
Total world flipped upside down. And it was actually out of that and my husband ministering to me through that I came to know a deeper understanding of the Lord. My parents were a catalyst for me being exposed to Christianity and knowing Christianity, and they called me to a high calling as a professing Christian. My parents held me accountable, which is ironic. I still am grateful for it, even though it's crazy now. But in 2023, I had gone to my dad's house for Christmas Eve, and he was remarried, and the kids were there for the evening. But then the next morning, they had to go to my mom's house, and nobody was together for Christmas anymore. And it was just, I was like, this is just wrong. Just feels wrong. And I cried in the bathroom upstairs because I was like, I gotta go like buck up and go down and put on a happy face because my 3 kids, I have little kids, and my family is not a family anymore. It's just like the same old thing of like, you had a family for a little bit and now you don't have a family anymore. And just like really accepting those lies from the enemy. We left that night and we went home and we were laying in bed. And I always tell people like, when we lay in bed, we just go to sleep. Like there's no sitting up chatting. My husband gets up at like 3 a.m. So it's like, he's out usually. But for some reason this night we were up for like 45 minutes just laying there. And all of a sudden, these things that my husband had been talking to me about, he was like, you need to listen to this thing that I was listening to, or, you should listen to this because of these things being relevant. All of this stuff had like caught up to me in years of knowing God. I studied apologetics when I was in high school. Like it was not, I've known how to defend the Christian faith for a really long time, well before I knew God. And all of it kind of snapped together, and like the Holy Spirit, like I felt God's presence. And that was kind of also like a light that shined and opened up. And it was like, I was laid bare. And I was like, there's no more excuses. There's no more justifying my actions. I was literally ready to wear a head covering, anything. I was like, what does the Bible say? I don't care what my culture says. I want to know what the Bible says. Do I need to cover my head during prayer? Do I need to do like, what does it look like to have communion? What do these things look like? Not according to what this is, because now also the fear of God was just put into me, that I was like thinking I'm saved and living essentially just a cultural, it was like a cultural religion that's not Christianity, but it's just called Christianity.
Everything's chaos. You're laying awake and you're like, I can't get this wrong. I don't, you're seeing it in a sense wrong, or it feels wrong, like you were describing.
Right.
And you're like, I need to be right with God. And And whatever he wants of me, I need to be 100% all in. It can't be like going through motions. Like this has to be 100% from here on out.
Yeah.
Amy is completely dedicated to whatever God wants. There's no other path.
Yeah. Come what may. I mean, I'd always kind of had, my family, we talked about theology. We talked about, it was like everybody, they're not fighting, but it was like debating and all kinds of stuff. And I always found it really fascinating. And, which is funny because it's this like, there's no real fruit there, but, I'd always been more forthright about like a certain stance, but I didn't really have a belief to truly back it up. I didn't have a faith to back it up. And whenever God opened my eyes to this thing, this death walk I was on, he also opened my eyes to how many people are on that same thing and just need to be told, you're walking to hell.
Like, Lord, we know you? And you'll say, no, I didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a terrifying verse.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Like,
also, if you're really super terrified of that and you're actually trying to live under the obedience of Christ, you're probably fine. And people who are going to hear that are not.
The fear of God is the
beginning of wisdom.
Is the beginning of wisdom. And to know that, the road to hell is paved with complacency, lukewarmness, even a good intention. And then you're just like, instead of that radical surrender,
right,
to Jesus. And of course we will make a mistake every single moment. Like the life of the Christians, like constantly getting up again and asking for help and confessing our sins. It's a daily conversion in that sense, but it has to be movement of the heart to say, I'm all in.
Right. Yeah. There's no like being on the fence. Satan owns the fence. It's like, you got to choose a side. And if you're not choosing a side, you chose Satan. It's about, if people who say, well, I became a Christian, but my life like didn't really look like, I don't really feel.
Nothing changed.
People do not like when I tell people like, you don't have a saving faith. I don't know. I can't tell you the amount of people that tell me, who are you to judge someone's salvation? And I'm like, who are you to hear them say something directly contradictory to what Jesus said and then say you don't have to participate because you're a Christian and it's not about you. Your faith isn't personal. And it is in a sense of your relationship with Jesus is personal, but the Christian life is not. The Christian life is not just everybody going and doing their own thing. That is not just somebody that you share a religion with. You're in a family with that person and you're called to standards. That's something that we in America miss. And it's actually to the detriment of the people around us and in our churches is that we refuse to hold people accountable. And to not hold someone accountable to the truth is to reject love for them. Because if your child is about to put their hand on the stove and you're like, well, I want them to live by their truth. And I want them to, they just need, I'm not saying like if they burn their hand, they're probably never going to do it again. Okay. So if a natural consequence happens, but a good parent will go and say, hot, that's hot. You're going to burn yourself. You're not just gonna be like, they need to figure it out for themselves. Maybe their experience of heat isn't going to be like my experience of heat. It's like,
we're all
hot.
Morally relativist, right? I mean, the majority of Americans identify as Christian. The majority, I think it's like 80%. Here, so you can maybe look it up. It's a big percentage say I'm Christian. Now, the number that actually go to a weekly service of some kind, mass or church or whatever, that number shrinks, right?
Oh, yeah.
And the more you attend church, the more you start to be morally aligned in your belief, at least. And then behavior kind of tries to catch up. I'm not always, So like the American church is constantly struggling with like, are we actually practicing faith or not? Then there's faith divisions. We've got Catholics and Protestants and Orthodox and all of this, which one of my big passions is like, we need to be under one body because Christians were not meant to be splintered into 50,000 denominations. Like that's not God's design.
Yeah. Everybody doesn't get to live with a buffet of truth or something.
Yeah. We're living a theological and moral buffet. Like that has been the Christian path.
And there's truth to like true theological disagreements. Like I'm a Protestant and I love my Catholic brothers and sisters, but I don't agree on certain things. And that's where you come together and you have a true conversation and you know what you believe and why you believe it. But to just be like, well, it's good for you and it's fine because God had an intention for how he wanted.
Truth.
Yeah, there really is.
There's not two things that are contradicting cannot be true at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And ultimately, there are going to be things that when Christ comes back, he's going to be like, and you got this wrong. There's going to be things that I'm going to stand 10 toes down on that I'm going to be wrong about. And everybody is going to experience that. Everybody is going to experience things that you were not completely correct about, because we live in a flesh world, like we live in a fallen world under the sin of the flesh. But at the same time, the response to that shouldn't be so we don't have to do anything about it or we don't have to change. That's the response to flaw in today's culture, is like, just, it doesn't really matter because this is who you are, or how God made you, or, you get a pass because of this or that, or it's how you interpret your relationship with God. And I tell people, your relationship, your Christian walk is not personal. It's not just about you. It's not, God has a bunch of little churches everywhere. You're a part of a body. You're not the body. You're part of a body. That's how you're described. And so you're held accountable to that body. And if you're sick, you're going to make the body sick. We see that. Paul talks about that all the time, of like, out of love and to maintain the integrity of the church, you have to cut off the bad parts. And we have refused to do that. And a lot of times it's not cut off the bad part just to maintain the integrity of the church. It's cut off the bad part so they realize they just got cut off the body so that they can come back onto the body in a healthy way.
I think an element of that, at least in the Catholic Church, is excommunication, where you can, and mortal sin, like the teaching on sin, which St. Paul talks about. Like, there are sins that are like deadly sins. Like, these are sins that, like, you do them, you're like rejecting salvation. And then there's little sins like, I was impatient, I was this, and it's like, okay, you're not like fully with the will, fully rejecting salvation, but you're like falling into the human weakness. But when you're like, oh, I'm sleeping outside of marriage, I'm cheating on my spouse, I'm stealing from this person, I'm murdering.
Sin is not sin. Yeah, it's not. Oh, it's all sin. That's not.
And those more serious things, it's like you are severing yourself from the body, and that is, the wages of sin are death. Like, it's called mortal, meaning like this is a deadly sin. And people can get themselves all worked up where they get more accustomed to deadly sin, and it's not even sin to them anymore.
Yeah.
And that's what we're living in. And now, everybody's heart is going to be different, because you might not fully know even the sin you're in, especially if you were raised in it and you didn't really were given a teaching on it. So that's where there is so much confusion. It's like some people have a conscience that's more formed than others based on life circumstances, the inputs. But like you were saying earlier, especially once you hit the age of reason and into adulthood, now you have to take command as best you can and responsibility for your own formation.
Right.
Like, no matter what you have struggled with in your life, God will make a way for you. And our job is to make movements of the soul towards him and towards truth. And he will guide us, and there will be lots of mercy for us, each of us along the way. So what happened? So after this 2023 moment, after that you got the fire in you and you're like, okay, I need to be a better wife. I need to be a better mom. I need to start creating Christian content and preaching.
It was right after that. It was right after
the timeline, right? You
Yeah.
started social media at that point, and
Yep. It was in the beginning of 2024 that, because I had like made meme pages and stuff, like I was telling you earlier. And I shared part of my story with my parents. And while that's a really big part of my foundation for why I do things, and like my testimony is a way that I can connect to other people to speak the truth and love of God. Like, for me, it's all in on Christ. While that's a really big part of what fuels my desire to see the humanization of the unborn, of the homeless, of the poor, of those who are the lesser in our society, and we have them in our society, whether we want to act like that's not there. There is levels of respect that we allow certain people to have that we don't allow other people to have. So while it fuels that, for me, I'm all in on Christ and speaking the truth of Christ. And I have kind of a deadpan way of doing it. And
it's great.
I try to also, my husband's like, you gotta kind of soften the blow. Like, you gotta kind of, and so I do try, but I realized that because of all of this trauma that I had had, there was this formation of having to articulate exactly what I'm thinking, but reading people.
But reading people.
Reading
how people are responding.
But also what's going to make sense to you. It's a God thing, but I can just know how you're going to understand what I'm going to need to tell you. And I have a ability to project that in how I connect with people. And because of that, God has put into my path certain things that I talk about. And it comes in seasons, and there's different things that I talk about. And right now, I'm more in a season of like, as Christians, we have to stand in the truth. And we're in a war. We're in a spiritual war. There's a sense of urgency that has really awakened people. And even before what happened with Charlie, there was a stirring of the Spirit in the Christian community. A lot of people started kind of feeling like this urgency.
I'm feeling it. And like, I mean, where sin abounds, grace abounds more, but it's this sense of urgency. I think there's an urgency. I feel it. I think a lot of people are feeling it. We're like, we can't keep doing this. Like, we have to live differently.
Right.
Not in some harsh or cruel or, mean way. It's quite the exact opposite. We have to live with complete abandonment to the will of God and with courage and love. I mean, that's the moment. And if you don't do it, you're missing out on your own life as well as an opportunity to help other souls.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's also this false sense of security that so many people have. I can follow God however I need to, and that's going to be enough. And people have neglected the Lord and the benefits of living in obedience to the Lord in exchange for this like counterfeit. Satan does not go he does go up and make completely new religions. But one of the best ways to get the real threat off of the battlefield is to make them have a false sense of security and to give them a counterfeit, 99% truth and a 1% lie. Yeah, that 1% lie kills you. It's not like the 1% is the yeast. It just ruins the whole batch. So it's a completely false gospel that's gone out. And with revival and like the revival that we're seeing of people realizing, like what we were talking about earlier, the only truth is God. Even in the conservative movement, people call me like MAGA all the time. I'm like, I think you've got me pen wrong.
Are you MAGA?
No.
You don't strike me as MAGA.
No, people get really mad when I'm honest about Trump. Okay. But
have you called Trump out?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But I was just saying that there's this like false gospel, and everybody, even in the conservative movement, are like what you were saying. Everybody calls himself a Christian. It's like, but you may have conservative ideals, but you've still fallen for the religion that mimics Christianity.
What do you think is the biggest mistake of people who are kind of conservatism is becoming their religion, in your opinion?
Well, number one, it gives like a false sense of moral superiority. Your morals, if they didn't come from God, are filthy rags. So while I will say that there is a certain amount of preservation that you benefit from having the law, obeying the law that God wrote.
Like, I'm more righteous than those, people who are transgender or whatever the concern, And
exactly.
Again, I'm not trying to like accuse every conservative, because if I had to pick on a box, are you moderate, liberal, or conservative? Of course, I check conservative.
Oh gosh, yeah.
But I think what you're speaking to is, especially in the social media world, the tendency to that moral superiority and that tone of like, I am better than you.
Yeah.
And we aren't better than anyone.
No,
like, not at all.
Yeah.
And we actually are less than because we've been given so much grace. So we should actually be doing more than that person out there that we're trying to talk to, because we have the grace.
The truth. Yeah. I would say that is a big issue, is like, if you're the source is what matters, not necessarily the outcome. Kind of like what I was telling you before, is like I'm putting my own fruit on my tree and I was like, look at this thing that I've done. But the true fruit of the Spirit comes from the Spirit. You've got a counterfeit if you look like the Spirit without having the Spirit.
The fruits of the Spirit, I have like the poster here in the office, but I just look at them and it's like, they are so different than a lot of what is characterizing most of politics on both sides.
Gosh. Yeah.
But, love, joy, peace, patience. Like, are we ever patient anymore with one another? Kindness, goodness, faithfulness. This is a big one. Gentleness.
I know. I struggle with that one.
Me too. I mean, especially when I'm impatient with my kids, I'm like, and then the other one, self-control.
That is, I think, we justify a lack of self-control because we say that it's for a good reason. It's like,
what do you mean?
Is a good cause. Like, well, I may have lost self-control, but I was righteously,
like my righteous anger, my indignation.
Yeah, very little.
You owned the libs, but did you really? Yeah.
Yeah, very few times when somebody is getting that righteous anger out on the internet, is it actually righteous? And I'm saying that because I'm guilty and not because I'm like shaking my finger at anybody, but are we going to be honest with ourselves? A lot of times it's not about like being honest with yourself first. And I know like if you get really defensive about something, it's probably because you have a problem with it. And I know that from experience every single day. And being online is like ruthless, but it has also inserted this echo chamber on both sides that it's like, well, this side's better than this side because of like they have the same ideals as us. And it's like, well, they get that from the law. And so they're benefiting from Christianity. Conservatism is benefiting from Christianity, but it isn't the Christian movement. And if you settle for that, you're settling for much less than what God has to offer you. And you're actually doing yourself and everybody around you a disservice by doing that. And I'd push back on Trump because not my platform, because it's not mine, but the entire thing that I stand on is the truth. Because without the truth, you have nothing. Okay. Nothing is worth compromising on the truth. The truth is Jesus. You don't get truth without Jesus. But when you stand on that, everything, it applies to everybody. You don't get an exemption. And as Christians, we give exemptions to certain things and certain people.
On our side. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's despicable in the eyes of God.
And it also discredits us in the eyes of unbelievers.
Now, I think it's another thing to be like, well, no politician's perfect. I'm not voting for a pastor. I'm voting for a politician. Yeah. La-di-da. And it's like, okay, to some degree, yes, but I believe character does matter in the higher office.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course, a leader should have character. What are we doing?
They're the person that holds that God instructs in Romans 13, 12. I'm blanking on it now, but where he literally has instructed them and placed them there. You think that their character doesn't matter to God. That's not.
Well, in the church, he describes the bishops and the deacons to specifically have like really extraordinary character, like extra character.
Oh, yeah.
Now that's for the prelature of the church. So it's a little different than the political realm, but I mean, we could get into so much. And also I was like, we got to have you back, Amy, and talk theology too, Catholic, Protestant stuff. There's so much. I really wanted to ask you though about the pro-life issue, because your story, the struggles that you have experienced in foster care, and not every foster care kid has been through what you've been through. Right. Some have had it a lot better. And yeah, I'm sure some have had it worse. Right. But I think you're on the more bad side, would you say?
Yeah, I've definitely heard some horror stories. Yeah. So I think,
where would you place yourself in the realm of kids in foster care in terms of really great outcomes, really great family placements versus like the worst, the family was abusing them?
Yeah. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, like 10 being like you got by nearly unscathed and like 1 is like the most horrific thing ever happened. I'd probably say like a 5.5.
You are.
4.5. On the lesser, because not every single child that goes into foster care is going to experience horrific things.
So you're saying most children, it's like, it's not great, but it's not horrible.
Yeah, because you're going to see kids that go back home. Yeah. You're going to see kids that end up in families that they're biologically related to. You're going to see families that adopt a child and they got by nearly unscathed, and not completely, but not every child that goes into foster care. A vast majority of the foster parents are in there because it's not just for a paycheck. It really isn't. I think that's a horrible stigma so many people give. They really have a desire and maybe they had rose-colored glasses when they went in, but they grit their teeth and they stick it out, and they really are trying to provide the best stable environment and loving environment for these children. And so a lot of them go into that. Now, our people who work the system are overworked and they're spread thin.
What does that mean? Work the system?
Like that keep the system going, like your caseworkers and your managers and the transport people and all that.
Do you think we don't invest enough in it as like if you were the queen of America or the president of America?
Yeah.
You're the president of America and you're like, okay, Amy, fix the adoption and foster care system. Just fix it. Mm-hmm. What would you do?
I don't think that it's about pumping a bunch of money into it. I think it's about the structure. And I also think that it's about having the child in mind at first and not just the family, because I think I see a lot of sacrificing the child on the altar of reunification and dragging a child out. I've seen children in foster care for 7 years trying to reunify. I've seen parents who should never have been allowed to retain the rights of their child. My own family member being affected by this, that child went back into the home and they were abused in the home. And time after time after time, these parents were given over and over opportunities when they put the parents' best interest over the child. So if that would be one thing I would fix is...
How do we fix that?
I think that it's about having less leniency.
Like you abuse your kid, you're done. Like,
well, it just depends.
And by abuse, I mean like
significantly
abuse. Like it like passes the threshold of like illegal.
Yeah, you knowingly and intentionally inflict harm on your child. You are not a safe parent.
So you lose your custody rights.
I would say yes, because 9 times out of 10, when they go back, they experience it again, and then they slip through the cracks. Kids die way too much from going back to a home they should have never been placed back in. There's so much leniency. And then the second thing is to have more caseworkers. The caseworker load for children versus caseworker is exponentially high.
You mean they have like dozens and dozens of kids each person?
I mean like, no, but that doesn't mean like these people are running around 7 days a week. It's like, well, you get Monday through Friday and you're on call every other. No, you get a call in the middle of the night because somebody's trying to call you because that child is the caseworker's child too. They may not be parenting them, but that's their responsibility.
So they're being abused at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
So you need to go.
Or they're having a total meltdown and the police are called, or they ran away, or the foster parents or the birth parents are knocking on my front door because they found out where I lived and they're demanding to see their child. Like, these are things that the caseworkers are having to deal with. And I know people will say, well, they signed up for it. You knew, but the system's already putting everybody involved at a disadvantage. It's not just money, it's the entire structure, and it's the court systems too. It's like gets drug out, and a lot of things could be handled if it was done with the children in mind.
I have heard this from other foster parents, not as much from foster kids. Because I feel like, I guess I've talked to more parents than the children. A lot of the children that I know are still children. They're not like out of the system like you and now have your own family. But I hear this a lot from foster parents and adoptive parents, where they say it's always about the parent, not the foster parent, but the biological parent, to the detriment of the child.
Yep.
And even like visitations and things like that. Or in custody disputes too. I hear like with abuse allegations, like it's less about is the child being abused and more about the parent, the dad, as an example, has the right to the child. Yeah. And unless abuse can be proven, the dad should have this opportunity. It does get scary though, because like, what about false allegations?
Yeah.
What about the state overstepping?
Which does happen. It absolutely happens. And there's a certain level of discernment that you almost can't breathe into the structure of the system, because you can't make everybody have discernment. But I think that there's parameters in place that aren't in place.
That are not in place.
No. And I would say too that the foster systems have a lot of federal funding. And so why is it not being allocated properly? I would say that there would need to be a restructuring of that, because it's not that the state's broke. It's what is the state spending its money on?
What is the state spending its money on?
Yeah. And there's a lot of incentive. I think that there's a lot of incentive to have a broken system, because it makes people a lot more money. And
what does that mean? Meaning, who's making the money?
Well, if you look at certain cities that I won't name names of, they have a really bad homelessness issue, right?
And they get money for every
millions of
homeless
dollars. And people get rich and people still sleep on the street. And you can't go in when you can't just pump a bunch of money into people that are homeless. Like it's a foundational issue with them. So I'm not out here like claiming that I have the amazing answer of what's going to heal homelessness, but I know it's definitely not people with $500,000 salaries on a board of 10 people, a board of 10 people making exponential, like so much money. Sorry, I'm like losing my words. It makes me so angry. But when you see people get rich off of that system, you've now created a monster. So,
are you talking about pensions too, or are you talking about just like nonprofits, or what's the?
Oh yeah, nonprofits
whole
is just
thing?
money. Most nonprofits is just money laundering. Like it's just washing money to go directly into the pocket.
I remember Gavin Newsom. Again, I don't want to get the facts wrong, and I don't want to even say it was Gavin Newsom. It was a mayor of San Francisco. And they're like, we're going to solve homelessness. So we need, I don't know, $500 million or something. And then like they spent $500 million.
And it got worse.
And there was like no solution to homelessness. And so everyone's like, where did this money go? Mm-hmm. And I'm sure it went to a lot of salaries, but I think it also went to things like, clean needle funds and like all of these like
things to propagate the
programs
issue.
that ultimately, propagated the issue. So, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot to unpack there, but it's like, how does one unpack that?
Mm-hmm. It's a total shift of the entire system because the system is flawed. And I won't say too, a lot of people that participate in the system have really good intentions and they start off really wanting to help people. And a lot of people stay with the desire to see families succeed. Who doesn't want that? I mean, if you really think about, there are people out there who really don't care. They act like they care or they just act like they don't care. But most people have a desire to see children succeed, families reunited, people off the street, people not having to sleep in the homeless shelter with their 7-year-old. People really want to see that. And the people that I see doing that in my community is the church. It's really not.
It's not even the government.
It's not the government. It's about the church stepping up and doing that, not just out of obligation, because you have an obligation to do it, but out of a desire to honor the Lord and humanize people. And you're just really not going to get that when you have a system that makes people money off of the problem.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to be like, and this is what I would do to fix it. Because you can't just go fire a bunch of people or be like, pull the funding.
If you were the boss, maybe you could.
I know. But I don't think my nerves could take that.
What do you say, Amy, to people? And this is the incessant example used by people who support abortion, who say, look, it is a really rough system. Single moms struggling, foster care.
Yeah.
I was actually just doing a debate last night at Yale, and they were saying, I don't remember if she was saying this before the debate or during, but my opponent was talking about how, there's all of these families that are, or people that are really low income and they don't have any resources and there's addiction and and you're just going to have them all have 3,000 more children a day. If we ban abortion, there's 3,000 abortions a day. That's 3,000 more children born a day. And many of them may be born to these struggling families or individuals.
Right. Yeah. The whole premise of that is false compassion. I care so much about these people. We should let them kill their children. I'm sure that would make that woman recoil. No, that's not what I'm saying, but it is what you're saying, actually. And I know that isn't the politically correct thing to do, to call someone on their false compassion, but that's what it is. What you're telling people who are in the foster care system is, if I were to love you how I think you deserve to be loved, I would have killed you before you were born, so you never had to experience this. Instead of allowing you to see hope, I would have taken your life before, because I'm so compassionate. But you hear that, you're like, that's Okay, that's not compassion. And people would say that you're framing them incorrectly, that you're mischaracterizing them, but you're not. You're not mischaracterizing somebody. People really think that they can outlove God, that they can outlove the logical love that exists, and they can outcompassion everybody. And their Band-Aid solution is to get rid of the problem. Because we don't
The
have...
problem being the person.
Yeah. No, not the person, the system. So I don't even think when they say that, I think a lot of times they do treat the person like the problem. But even their excuse of saying it's not the person, because it's not a person yet, but it's actually the system that's the problem. There's nothing we can do here. That is treating it. That's what they're treating as the problem. But there's a solution to that. And even a system being flawed does not justify the killing of people, because by using that, it would be like saying, instead of people being homeless, it would have been better for them to be born, but never been born. If people have been raped in their life, it would have been better for them to never be born out of their mother's womb. If somebody went hungry, it would have been better for you to have never been born. At what level of suffering do you say it's okay for you to not be alive? What level? It's arbitrary, which means that it's a flawed argument. It means that you have said that someone's worth and value in their life is predicated on something that you get to determine. But we all live by one law. So if everybody gets to decide it, you can make no law about it ever, which means you could kill anybody. It really is like that. We have morality written on us because it's a direct reflection of our Creator. They have to play by those rules, actually. Even if they don't acknowledge God, they still live with the reflection of God in them. They can't help it. So when you go and you say those things, I also like to remind people, you know, that there are kids in foster care who have already been told you're not important enough to give up drugs for. You're not important enough to get rid of the boyfriend that is sexually abusing you. You're not important enough to stop beating when you make me mad. You're not important enough for any of those things. And then from the world, they say, I'm so compassionate. It would have been better if you would have never been born. So I'm going to make sure anybody that's like you doesn't have to be, because their mom doesn't want them, or their mom doesn't want them to have as terrible as a life as you. It's really one of the most despicable things that you can do, to use the life of a child already upended in turmoil to justify killing another child. There's no way around it.
How does that make you feel personally, having been in foster care for so many years yourself, when you see those people making those arguments for abortion?
I have complete validation in the Lord. Like, I know where my worth comes from. I know that I'm loved. I know that even if anything were to ever happen to like all of my family, through Christ and the body of Christ, I will experience love from other people. And even if I don't experience it from people, I experience it from Christ. I have value. So for me, it doesn't anger me, but it does anger me for others who hear that. And it makes me so angry, because it's so self-righteous. You're so self-righteous. And I struggle to have pity for people that think like that. Just like I would struggle to have pity for people who put millions of Jews in gas chambers. Because to dehumanize someone based on what you think is a life worth living is one of the most despicable things you can do. You don't get to decide this life is an acceptable life. It's like what we were talking about earlier, how society sometimes refuses to acknowledge. Everybody says, well, we need to care for the homeless, we need to care for that. But we refuse to acknowledge that there are certain people in societal classes that get more dignity, get more of our respect, more of our attention than other people. And it's that same idea that bleeds into it is the dehumanization when you characterize people like that. And I'm not saying like you need to have immense respect for somebody who's an active serial killer or something like that, but just status, whether it comes from your wealth or the family that you were born into, or the mental capacities that you have, your physical attributes, whether society thinks you're pretty, whether you have a certain scale weight on the scale, all of these external things, those don't determine your value in life. And when we say certain people can't have access to life because it will infringe on someone else, or because we don't think that that's a life worth living, it would be better to just not let you live at all. You've created this horrific world that puts people in different categories worthy of life. And you go and say, you're the most compassionate. You're the most pro-woman. Are you pro-foster child woman? Like which ones? Because you've actually exposed yourself to be a person who dehumanizes other living people. Because you're not just dehumanizing the child that's unborn, you're dehumanizing everybody with that life that you said isn't worth it. That's a lot of people. A lot of people. There are a lot of people that are hungry that you just dehumanized. There are a lot of people that experience sexual abuse in their childhood, in their adulthood. And you saying you're part of the Me Too movement, you're dehumanizing all of these people and calling it compassion. It's just such a sleight of hand. It has Satan all over it.
Thanks for speaking out about it so well. I mean, I do think of like, everyone needs to listen to Amy on this topic because like Amy has the experience herself and the words to explain it for people, because that is one of the biggest lies that I see. And it's like every day almost you see that lie about how abortion's healthcare because, or abortion's good or compassionate because you're preventing suffering.
Right.
In the future. And I just look at your life and, you know, your marriage, your children, your faith, and now your work. And it's so beautiful and it's so good. And, you know, I know you obviously credit the grace of God, but it is an inspiration. And I think that's one of the reasons your content and your mission is just growing quickly. And I love to see that. And I'm so excited for that. And I hope everybody listening to the show follows Amy, because you are an inspiration.
Thank you for saying that. That means a lot. That's really encouraging. I get messages from people and I try to read them all. It gets to be a lot sometimes, but telling somebody that you're encouraged by them, it goes a long ways. Like tell the people in your life that they're encouraging you, because it's good to acknowledge that in somebody else, and it reminds them and it stirs the spirit again to keep going, because we're in a battle right now against powers and principalities, and we're in a war against Satan. And I think sometimes we kind of fall asleep on the battlefield, but you know, I always tell
nudge
people,
each other. Wake up.
I know, but some people say, well, I don't have like a testimony. My testimony is not as interesting. Like I grew up, both my parents were married and this and that. It's like, you're one of the ultimate examples of like what you want for somebody.
What you
share
want. The goodness. You're saying.
Yeah, sharing the goodness.
Good.
Yeah. So it's like nobody has a boring testimony. Everybody has something. And I would never be like, I hope you have the most. I'm never going to tell my children I hope they have an interesting. I want their testimony to be boring. Like, please let it be boring. But it's encouraging. We're all fighting in this battle against evil. And whenever the ashes of my life and my childhood God uses to build other people up, is just like the biggest like smack in the face to the enemy, I feel, of like, you can't do any damage to the children of God, because God will ultimately redeem them. So
Amen.
Thank you for saying that. It's very encouraging to hear that.
Amen. Thank you, Amy, for doing this podcast. We're filming at night,
good.
by the way. Amy is a super trooper.
I
She
know,
said that
it's
at
like-
the beginning.
it's
I
like
don't know how late it is right now. I
midnight
don't want
my
to
time.
look, but you are crushing it. Amy, thank you. Where can people find you and your work?
I am on Instagram and on Facebook, and I'm going to try to get back to doing more long form content on YouTube. And it's Amy with 2 Y's because somebody took my handle. Amy 2 Y's Main. M-A-I-N.
We'll link it too.
Okay.
Thank you, Amy. Come back again. Let's do it again.
I know.
Thank you
let's
so
do
much.
theology next time.
I know. We'll do theology. Well, that'll be its own episode.
I know.
This was beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Lila Rose Show with Amy Main. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you're subscribed. That's the quickest, easiest way to support the show is to subscribe. Also, if you want to support the show and get behind the scenes access and ad-free episodes and more, you can do that over at patreon.com/Lila Rose Show. Thank you so much. A huge thank you to our partner, EWTN, the largest religious broadcaster in the entire world. EWTN is reaching millions of people every single day with the beautiful truth of the gospel. You can watch new episodes of The Lila Rose Show 24 hours before they hit podcast app over at EWTN.com/on-demand.